Man, can you feel it? We are almost there. Media days rosters have been known. And today we are going to tell you who is our pick to click this year. Right here on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Stick around.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Willis. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Over there is my Twitter address, at the Stephen Willis. Give us a follow if you want to. I comment on just about everything. I'm kind of about everything. So, also before we get started, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications whenever we upload a new video, and of course upvote the video itself. That would help us out greatly. Now, today I've been doing magazine stuff all week, and I wanted to talk about today who my pick to click is in this first segment, and the person I'm looking forward to seeing most. And this is basically through the magazines, through spring practice, all of this, my pick to click. Now, it's circled on the offensive side of the ball because that's kind of where I live, is the offensive side of the ball. And it was like, what needs to happen? What do I want to see? And it was like, is it Luke Altmyer or Jaxson Dart? No, that probably isn't them, even though they are the centerpiece of this entire offense. Is it Zach Evans? Yeah, he's the most talented running back ever to sign with Ole Miss, but it probably isn't him either. Then maybe it's Jaylon Robinson from Central Florida. He's got Elijah Moore, wide receiver. I tend to gravitate towards wide receivers, but it isn't him either. The more I think about it, the excitement that I have, what I want to see the relationship to the quarterback develop with, is Michael Trigg. And it's absolutely crazy to think about back in July when everybody thought that the main person coming in, everybody was trying to get Jaxson Dart, and Michael Trigg was just an also-ran. Nobody hardly talked about Michael Trigg. Everything was Jaxson Dart. And I understand that because Jaxson Dart is a quarterback. And whenever he runs the offense and everything goes well, it looks smooth. I mean, this fall is all about replicating that. Because when things go well for him, it looks really good. And the ceiling is higher with him as the starting quarterback, but also the floor is lower. So that floor is lower is going to be the thing that gives Luke Altmyer an opportunity to step in. Now, the ceiling isn't that much higher with him at quarterback, but it's higher enough to where the ceiling of the team raises with him being the quarterback. So, Michael Trigg is my pick to click. I'm excited. We have not seen this level of a tight end at Ole Miss's offense. We saw Kenny Yeboah, who was pretty good during the first 4 or 5 games of his last year. And I think he's with the Jets now. But we have not seen this Lane Kiffin offense with a top-shelf tight end like Michael Trigg. It has a chance to be pretty special, especially if you look on the other side, because I've told you all that this offense works in a triangle. There's 3 players that mean something besides the quarterback. I'm not counting the quarterback at all, but the running back is important. The running back is the one that's going to be, if he's good enough, force the linebackers to take a step towards the line of scrimmage. In this RPO offense that we run, so much of what we do is designed to torture linebackers. I've said this many times over and over and over again. This offense as a whole is designed to torture linebackers. And the first step in torturing the linebackers is having a running back that forces the linebackers to take a step forward. Zach Evans absolutely fits that bill. Now, behind the linebackers, that's the interesting part. because there's a lot you can do and a lot of variation that goes into. You can have the slot receiver running a seam with the tight end coming behind. You could have the tight end running the seam. You have a whole bunch of RPOs off of a linebacker depending what they do. And the slot receiver and the tight end can be a dominant presence in your offense. The important thing, though, as we told you yesterday, the outside receivers, they don't have much of a job in this offense. There's going to be people that don't really understand it and don't really know what's going on, that wonder why the wide receiver production isn't where it needs to be. It's an RPO system. The conflict players are going to be right around the line of scrimmage. The wide receivers are going to be just that. But 10% of this offense, as I told you yesterday, is what I refer to as Lane Kiffin shot plays. And they're important because if you don't want safeties compressing down on Michael Trigg, on Jaylon Robinson, you need to push them back with the outside receivers. So that's the reason whenever they make plays, it's big plays. Over the last couple of years, I'm sure you can jog it in your mind. That's the way it looks. And if you can keep those safeties honest, Michael Trigg and Jaylon Robinson has a chance to be very special, and especially Michael Trigg. Lane Kiffin said that not many people are made like him in the world. Think about that for a second. Not many are made like him in the world. He also said he looks like a high school player playing with junior high kids at times. This is a kid with a phenomenal catch radius, unbelievable athleticism. Go on YouTube and watch him dunking a basketball. He is legit. He is something that we have not had potentially since Rufus French. And he may be more athletic than Rufus, but Rufus was the last really elite tight end that we had. Now, I understand Dawson Knox. I understand Chris Mangum. I understand all of that. They weren't really Rufus. Rufus was special in the fact that a contested catch was not a problem for him. He had a huge catch radius. He might not have been the most super athletic person, but he was a tremendous football player in tight end. So much so, David Cutcliffe ran a tight end reversed against Texas Tech in the 1998 Independence Bowl. Like 15 practices to put in a whole system. And Ole Miss ended up winning that game. So that was Rufus's last game at Ole Miss. And I'm sure Rufus regrets going pro every day, but that lets you know that he was a special player. That they identified him as a special player. And that they treated him as a special player. So whenever you look at tight ends, no other tight end got that treatment in Ole Miss's offense. Heck, Phil Longo should be prosecuted for what he did to Dawson Knox. But there's a heavy, big-time tight end. Now, Evan Ingram, different guy, different dude. He was essentially a plus wide receiver. Okay? So whenever I talk about tight ends and the specificness of them, I'm not really counting Evan Ingram, who is a great player. I am not dogging him at all. But he was a kind of a plus wide receiver. And he was used as such in the inside slot and through RPOs and things like that. So Michael Trigg's going to be used in a similar way. But I don't think Evan Ingram worked in the run game the same way that Michael Trigg is going to be used in the run game at Ole Miss. That's my point. As far as a totally balanced tight end, Michael Trigg is a next level. Rufus French comes to mind. Doug Ziegler was a good player. Let's see, who else? At tight end. I actually, believe it or not, I really liked Robert Lane at tight end. They were just so messed up in their offense and what they wanted to do and what they were trying to do that he actually, I don't know, he got misused maybe. They tried him at one time, decided he wasn't Matt Leinart, and moved him to tight end. I mean, that's an honest-to-God description of what happened. They decided he wasn't Matt Leinart, so they moved him to tight end. Not adjusted offense to what he could do well. They couldn't do that. There was not the brain power there because Coach O had decided that the offense is going to look like this. It's going to look like the Norm Chow system. And after he was unable to get Lane Kiffin, all of a sudden he had Noel Mazzoni, who was running the offense at North Carolina State at the time, and it wasn't really the same thing. So the offense, even though it was, hey, we need it to look like the USC offense, so NC State guy, make your offense look as close to this as possible, but it doesn't work that way. Anyway, I got off the rails a little bit, but that is my pick to click. Michael Trigg is my pick to click for what's going on. When we come back, we are going to talk about the representation at Media Days that came out today. And also, in the last segment, we're going to talk about an interesting poll on the Ole Miss Football Twitter account about uniforms. Because it is uniform month. It is July. I can talk about uniforms. So, I do want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you will need. Why endure the often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait for the person behind the counter to order parts on their computer, ordering only the brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to Rock Auto at home and in your pocket. So you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. It's a family business that has served do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and their prices are reliably low for every customer. So go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. So this is what I want you to do. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your cars or truck. Write Locked On their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. It's amazing selection. It's reliably low prices. It's all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL and wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. So, all right, in the first segment, we talked about our pick to click. And our pick to click right now is Michael Trigg. That's the player that I'm looking forward to seeing more than any else. And I think he can have a huge, huge year. Regardless of who the quarterback is, regardless of how they run the ball, it doesn't matter. I think Michael Trigg is the guy to pay attention to. Now, in the second segment of the show, I do want to talk about Media Days. And it was announced that these players would be attending Media Days. And they are Cedric Johnson, Nick Broeker, and Johnathan Mingo. 1 week from today, they will be on stage. 1 week from today, they will be on stage. Well, 1 week from yesterday, actually. From Monday. So Monday they will be on stage, and Lane Kiffin will be on there first. I think Lane Kiffin follows Greg Sankey, and then like 55 minutes later is Cedric Johnson, Nick Broeker, and Johnathan Mingo. I don't know about the exact order, but man, I really like the uniforms, and that is a tease for what's coming up in the third segment. Now, these are three pretty solid players to go to Media Days. You can't take really necessarily a transfer. You need somebody that had some sort of involvement in last year's season. You got Nick Broeker, who's probably going to take a lot of questions about moving into guard, if they know that he moved into guard. Johnathan Mingo is going to have questions about his health and how he wants to have a big year. I think he could have a big year. He could be the obviously number one, and we'll see what it looks like in Cedric Johnson. It's all about replacing Sam Williams for him. He has a chance. He had 6.5 sacks last year, and because of that, he was able to provide an alternative to Sam Williams. You weren't able to just double team Sam Williams all the time because of on the other side was Cedric Johnson. So it was quite interesting. The defense really worked, especially the defensive line, even with a three-man front, which they have built and recruited to over, I don't know, the last 12 months, and they're 3 deep on the defensive line. They're 2 deep in the secondary. Linebacker's a little bit of an issue with Kari Coleman and Troy Brown, but we'll see how that plays out over fall. But I don't really have a problem with any of these guys going to SEC Media Days. And I do respect them for putting SEC Media Days in Atlanta instead of doing everything in Birmingham. You already have the baseball tournament. It's okay to move media days around, especially this will be at the College Football Hall of Fame. It's okay to do that. It's okay to have the basketball tournament move around from Nashville to Tampa. That's fine. You have the baseball tournament in Birmingham. That's really the only thing you need. Now, the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center, eventually you just think it might get the basketball tournament or the women's tournament or something like that. But I like it moving around, and I like the media days especially moving to Atlanta, Georgia. Because Atlanta, Georgia, if you think about it, is halfway between the SEC Network headquarters, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina, expansion clue, and Birmingham, Alabama. So it makes it a little bit easier for everybody to get there. And, of course, flights from Charlotte all land in Atlanta because Atlanta is the busiest airport in the world. So I really like it. You know, Nick Broeker, I think he's going to be a road grader at left guard. Jeremy James is going to be a good left tackle, and you're going to see a situation where they run left a lot, and that is by design. Caleb Warren apparently did fairly well and started to pick up snapping, but we'll have to see how that looks in the fall. And on the right side of the line, Mason Brooks and Eli Acker. Ole Miss has a chance to have an experienced offensive line, and because of that, I really like Zach Evans, and I've talked about this over and over again. And all of these really uber talented players that are entering the sphere of Ole Miss. And I do say all the time, it's one thing to be talented, it's quite another to be good. And these guys are talented, but there's a long way for them to go. It's not anything, I don't know, mean or anything. It's almost a show me. We've almost doubled our number of blue chip players on the roster. Show me. Show me what you got. Part of that, I think, you know, I do all these inconsistencies about magazines. And I talk about what's going on, and I talked about the quarterbacks yesterday. And what is apparent to me is that they still view transfer as a dirty word. It's going to take a while for that to change. It just is. They're set in their ways. But you can see how Ole Miss is getting underestimated by almost anybody. I mean, you see it over and over again. I expect Ole Miss to be 4th or 5th whenever they do the media poll at the SEC. I expect them to have a similarly low participation on the all-SEC teams. I expect that. And I expect at the end of the year everybody to be really surprised. And for Lane Kiffin to be a contender for SEC Coach of the Year. That's what I expect to happen. So, those are the SEC Media Day participants. I look forward to see what they have going for them. Now, real quick, I'm going to tell you about Built Bar. From the people that invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given the Coconut Brownie Chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, the Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, flavor that you love, and a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. Stop drooling and listen. They're good for you. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, all delicious. Coconut Brownie Chunk Puffs are only here for a limited time. Go to Built.com now to make sure you don't miss out. They are going to go fast because they taste amazing. All Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. So here's what you need to do. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15, all one word, LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including iTunes. So don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say. Just make sure it has a 5-star review. I'd appreciate it. What that will do, that will help others find the show. If they search Ole Miss in iTunes, our podcast will come up more towards the top. That rating is important for that. So that's the reason I'm asking you to do this, is because it will help others find the podcast. It's on iTunes. 5-star review. Say whatever you want to say. All right. We had media days. We talked about my pick to click. Now, we're going to have a little bit of fun because it is uniform month. Everybody's like, what? It's uniform month. July, jokingly, has been uniform month for Ole Miss fans forever. We've always talked about uniforms. There's been arguments about whether or not we need to wear the classic blue or the classic red or the shade of the gray pants or the stripe on the side of the gray pants. All of that is important. There was even a stretch where we kind of had silver pants back at the end of cut in the beginning of Orgeron. But they got them back together. And Hugh Freeze took over. The number of uniform combinations even improved, including an all-navy offering. White pants to be worn with white jerseys. So you have kind of a thing with a navy blue helmet or the powder blue helmet. And all those started to come together. And then Lane Kiffin took over. And I'm going to say he put a poll on Twitter. It was somebody at the football office, but, nothing really happens at the football office unless he knows about it. So they put a poll out. And the poll was, all of the uniforms got listed. And because of that, and at the end of it, you were allowed to vote on what you thought it was. So they did. They put pictures like this up. The players, the white helmet, the powder blue jersey, the powder blue helmet, the red jersey. And all of these options just seemingly appeared. And I've just got these on a 30-second loop, so just bear with me. And you start to look at them, and you're like, man, yeah, I really, really like the powder blue and red. But that white helmet with the powder blue jersey, that looks fantastic too. It's so unique, and it's something that Ole Miss can own. And then you have the navy, which is just, the OG, what you like to see, and the all whites, the Stormtrooper, which I love that stripe, and I think that we need a pair of white pants that have that stripe down the side. But I also think we need the powder blue stripes and powder blue numbers with this, but that's another discussion altogether. But I really like the way this looked, and they started showing all these uniforms, and you realize how good we actually look. You got the powder blue and the powder blue. And you're like, how will everybody vote on this? This is crazy. And I set my selection in on vote. And I was like, okay, I'll just put it in. And I was like, okay, I'm the first voter. I'm obviously the first voter. So that's the reason it's 100% on this one. And then you wait, and there's like 11 voters and 12 voters and 13 voters. And all of a sudden, you realize this is an absolute whitewashing. It's a slaughter. To where after 644 votes, 54.5% of the vote was for the powder blue. Not the navy, not the red, not the white. The powder blue by itself has more than the next three combined. And what a world we live in where that is an absolute possibility. Now, granted, I will say this. Whenever they gave options with the powder blue and the white helmet and the powder blue and the powder helmet, there was 5 options. 2 of them were powder blue. I get that. And some people like the powder blue helmet. Some people like the white helmet. It's all uniquely Ole Miss. All of these are uniquely Ole Miss. And I think that potentially they have a chance to be really, really influential. Not by this poll. This poll won't mean anything. But these jerseys, because the more I look at these jerseys, Ole Miss might be the best looking football team in college football. Now that they've embraced kind of their inner organ, and just with the white helmet, the powder blue jerseys, the powder blue helmet and the red jerseys, and you got the navy, and you got the white helmet that you probably can't wear with the navy jersey without changing the stripe or whatever, but they could do that. And you have a nice thing set up for all of these uniforms to be used and to be, you might have every uniform, not see one uniform more than 2 times in a season. And that's a good thing. Now, I do think that all Navy needs to come back. I actually like the all Navy uniforms, and they need to come back. And I do think that there needs to be a powder blue pants that can be worn with the white jersey. I think that needs to come back. But if you do that, you can go navy blue like you did like Jeff Scott against Vanderbilt back in the day. But you have the powder version of that, and you have so many combinations. You can almost wear different uniforms every game. And everybody's like, well, what about our identity? And Ole Miss was the original Oregon. I don't think people realize that. Everybody wants to say tradition, but Ole Miss was the original Oregon whenever they would come out in blue or come out in red. And this was back in the 50s and 60s when nobody else did that. Everybody was like one color jersey and white jersey. Ole Miss had variety. Ole Miss had variety to the point where in 1983 in the Independence Bowl, and if you have any question about this, you can hit up Mike Fitzsimmons on Twitter. He'll tell you all about it because he was on that team. They played in the monsoon over in Shreveport. One half, they wear white with red jerseys, red numbers. And then because it rained so hard, the second half they wore white with blue numbers. That was just part of it. Ole Miss has always had at least 4 uniforms. This is just the way it is. It's not anything new. But some people are so concerned with trying to copy their perceived powers. Everybody wants to be Alabama. Everybody wants to be Georgia. Everybody wants to be Ohio State. Now Georgia and Ohio State, they're playing the uniform game too. And really the only one that's not is Alabama. But everybody's going to cling to Alabama. And they're going to white knuckle it and hold on for dear life. But this train has left the station at Ole Miss decades ago. And trying to pretend we're something that we're not will not change that. Now, saying that, I love the OGs. The powder blue helmet on the red with the gray, fantastic. I love the navy with the gray, fantastic. I even like the way our road uniforms look with the powder blue helmets, with the gray pants and all that. Not saying anything derogatory about that, but I also like the powder blue with the white helmets. I like the powder blue going back and forth. And some people view uniforms as an either-or situation. That might not necessarily be true, but that's how they view it. And I think it's important that we realize that they view it that way. Because sometimes I know that I come off extremely braggadocious and know-it-all. That's just the way I am. That is my personality. That is my cross to bear. And it rubs people the wrong way. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand or hear your opinion. Whenever you're giving advice of what's going on, it's not like I'm just ignoring it. I'm hearing it and deciding if it's something I want to do. Is it worth tweaking my personality to do that? The same thing happens with these uniforms. There's going to be people that are just dead set against the OGs. Understand that whenever you say you're for these others. Because I'm the type of person, you're not replacing anything. You're adding to. That's the way I view things. I'm very non-confrontational on this. But some people, whenever a new uniform is brought out, they automatically assume it's in place of something. Something else has to go away. There's somehow a limit on what can be worn. Some people are just wired that way. But understand that these uniforms, it's pretty special. Our uniform selection is about as good as it gets in the country at the moment. And the white helmet with the red, I saw a picture of that yesterday. Yes, please. I'd like to buy that for $1. That's something I think we're going to see, and I think we're going to see it fairly early. We might see that against Troy, honestly. Well, I'm thinking white helmet, red jersey, white pants. So we'll see how it all goes. Anyway, get more of the SEC by making Locked On SEC your second listen every day. Host Chris Gordy and the local experts of Locked On take you across the SEC in 30 minutes. Make the Locked On SEC your second listen, Locked On SEC. I do want to say thank you for tuning in today. As we move on, I think tomorrow we might have Derek Vandegrift talking about the baseball signing class. We have Chris Childers. We have Tom Vanderford. We have Kara McCutcheon coming on this week. I'm trying to get an interview locked in. It's proving difficult to find a time. So we'll see exactly how that goes. If that happens, you'll have it this weekend. If it falls through, it doesn't. It's kind of a big reach. So we're going to try. I'm going to shoot my shot. But if they say no, they say no. So until tomorrow, I will see you then. Peace.